My name is Corey. This is my second podcast. I talked about this before. I don't know if I'm going to use any of that stuff. I go by the name Owl Movement. It rhymes with bowel movement, and it's kind of an Illuminati reference. That's kind of why I went with it. I do like Flying Lotus type stuff, I guess, maybe Boards of Canada. I don't really like to compare my music to other people, but I go for like instrumental, chill out stuff.
I'm Evan Snyder, also go by Skytree, and as evidenced by the heap of Boards of Canada vinyl over there, we're on a similar page. So right now I'm working on a new project that's very dub inspired. So I've actually been going through a lot of classic dub records, especially like King Tubby, King Jammy, Lee Scratch Perry, and being really almost like frustrated that it's taken me this long to discover a lot of this stuff. I'm familiar with like how dub is echoed into a lot of dub techno, dub step, future dub, everything else has come since hyperdub, burial, all of that. But to go back to the roots and see that in 1969 there were some incredible records being made that I had not heard until like last week makes me feel like, it's amazing I can, but at the same token, I really wish I had delved into stuff earlier. So for me, it's kind of a nerdy opportunity to really just do a bunch of research and listen to a ton of dub music and clean the house and play with the cats and call it research for this new project. So, yeah.
My name is Billy Mays, the third. My music is called Infinite Third, and it's guitar based. I call it cathartic ambient music because I feel like I'm just trying to make it really heavy eventually, and it keeps getting like these little peaks where like I want it to be like emotionally and like almost borderline like I don't want to call it metal, but like I don't know, post rock, post metal like world. But I'm solo and I use electronics and stuff, and a lot of it is live looping. But I'm currently on a 2-month tour. This is the third week of my tour, throughout the whole East Coast, and I'm just playing a bunch of like house shows and yoga studios and stuff like that, and everything in between. This is the first tour I've done that's like not festival based, which I don't know if it's better or worse yet. I've had great experiences with festivals, but this is like more city based, and it's kind of cool too in its own way. But yeah, when I get back from tour in August, I'm hitting the ground and recording my new album. It's called Channels, and I'm hoping to kind of delete everything before and just only have channels out there publicly when it comes out. So so it's kind of a rebirth for me. It's an album that's been in the making for like 3 years. So I'm anxious to see what that even turns into, because I don't know.
No, it's interesting that you say it's a rebirth, because I was just thinking about all it takes like for where like all the stuff we've been through to get our music to where it is. Like, what kind of stuff were you guys doing first, like before you started doing anything remotely resembling the stuff you do now? Because I started out with doing like death metal, like literally death metal, and then I don't even know what I did after that, and now I just do something that's chill out music. So I don't know. What were you doing first?
Well, I got my first drum machine when I was 16 for Christmas, and I actually had to work that Christmas day at a video store, which is not the worst thing to do on Christmas. But I took my drum machine with me, and it was a Boss DR5s. It was powered by AA batteries, and I spent the whole day in the video store because nobody came in for Christmas, just programming the shit out of that drum machine. And I had prior to that a Tascam 8-track, and was able to mess around a little bit with my my guitar effects multiprocessor. I had another Boss, I think it was like an ME30 or something like that, and mostly just like delved in after school, after I was done with my math homework, into making strange sounds and echoes and loops, and putting it down to tape, and having no particular objective in mind other than just like seeing what kind of voices I could find in there. And there was one night I was sitting in this kind of session mode after finishing up my my trig homework for high school, I think I was like 16 and a half. I had also just gotten my first guitar, which my parents got me for a Sweet 16 gift, which is like a Squire Strat. Yeah. Which is like, it's pretty much a Fender Strat, yeah. Like if you go through and you like, my little brother went to school for being a luthier. Even at that point in time, he was messing around with guitars and everything. So he brought the nut down. He made it really nice and smooth. He adjusted the truss rod perfectly. We put in some different pickups, and I love that Strat. It's still at my dad's place, and I need to bring it out here because like it's my first electric, and I still love the shit out of that thing. It's covered in stickers at this point. Probably doesn't even look like it should, but so there was one night I was sitting down in a session with the Squire Strat, the Boss ME multi-effects processor, and this drum machine I didn't have yet, because this is Christmas following my birthday that I would have received that. But I found these like voices in the echo, and I was brought back to this Aphex Twin track. I can't remember if it's on Selected Ambient Works Volume 1 or 2, but there's a particular track where it sounds like these phantoms were discovered inside the machine, and I always wondered how he got that, and I found it. I found the phantoms, and like I sat for 2 hours listening to this like loop in total fear because I loved it, from this box, and then watching the LEDs just like flicker. And that was my first like super potent musical moment in terms of like actually recording it down to tape. And I wish I had those tapes still. I wish I knew where they were. They're probably still in my dad's garage or something. But after that, for about 4 or 5 years following, I mostly just made music on tape. My friends were already into Fruity Loops and everything, and this is like when that stuff was actually becoming an option. When I first started, we just had tape, but then Fruity Loops came online into my senior year in high school and everything. I graduated 2002, so a little bit ago, but I didn't want to dive into the computer. I was like, I just want to see what comes out of these machines. And I finally got into Fruity Loops at the end of that year, right around the time I got the drum machine too. And mostly started making some really weird IDM type stuff. I was, obviously way into Aphex and Autechre and Boards of Canada as well. And had no idea what I was doing. I still don't, but it's like a process of illumination of the things that I know that I don't know that are working versus not, and just kind of whittling it down. So yeah, my first alias was Numenon. So like phenomena, or the opposite is the numinous. So the phenomenological, is like that which is apparent through senses, through everyday reality, and the numenological is like the unknown that is underneath everything. So I thought the Numenon would be a good title to use. And I don't know why I switched to Skytree, but at some point I was like, I'm going to use field recordings and really kind of gritty organic samples and a lot of like melodic guitar work and stuff like that, because I just wanted to incorporate that Strat into a bit more of like a literal fashion versus like all these kind of crazy effects, driven patterns. So yeah, that's kind of how it started, and here we are in my house and in New York City for some reason after all that with all this crazy gear. So it's interesting.
I kind of started out like you, like with heavy, like with metal, but like when I was in high school, I was into like new metal and stuff. I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing now, but there's some good stuff that came out of that. But I think I was always into like composing. I had a Boss 8-track, like a BR 1180 it was called, and I think I just got it instantly, and I was like, all right, I would just layer like 4 guitars as though there were 4 guitarists, and they were like borderline heavy, but I didn't really know what it was to be heavy at that time. I was kind of just like mimicking what I thought these new metal people were doing, so it's kind of embarrassing. But so it was just, I lived with my mom and she was alone, and she would like listen to this music and like support me and stuff, even though it was like probably terrible. But then I think it kind of evolved into like a melodic prog rock type thing when I was in college, and I called that I actually released that music, and it's online, and it's called Perception is the World was like the artist name. And I have one little like 5-track album that I'm like way into that I still go back to, and I'm like, wow, like I can't believe it. Yeah. And it's called Qualia was the album. And then in 2009, I lost all my gear in a fire. And this is like my turning point year in like, in that like intense way. I lost all my gear.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, exactly. And I started to get back on my feet, and I got like I actually, okay, so my first guitar was a Squire Strat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that's exactly like what I used all the time to record this stuff. I can't even remember at this point like what I got a Schecter like Devil series that was like had the horns. Yeah, I got that at some point, and I even have like senior pictures with it that my mom made me take, and I look like a bowler. Like I look like I'm bowling, like in a bowling match with like a guitar sitting in a chair. It's really embarrassing, but yeah. So in 2009, I actually got a Fender Strat that was like a Mexican Stratocaster, and I did notice a big difference, in like the sound and stuff. But I think that was when I mellowed out, and I only had this amp and this guitar, and I started making more like, I don't know, like post-rock inspired stuff, like inspired by like Mogwai and Explosions in the Sky and stuff. So that year I started like carving out this new kind of music. And that year also my dad passed away in June, a couple months after the fire. So I was like, all right, I'm going to finish this album. And that was my first album, Gently. I retrospectively released it as Infinite Third, but I had a different name at the time, which is like, I feel like I was just in this like hurt sensitive place that I called it Soft Words Traverse. And I honestly have no meaning for that, like what it meant. But then later on, I changed it to Infinite Third, and I retconned my discography and said, oh yeah, that was it. That was released by Infinite Third.
It was you, so
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. No, so that was, I don't know if the Infinite Third thing's obvious, but it's kind of like a duality thing. Like I'm the third, and that's like the human side, and then like the infinite side is like whatever's like looking out through my eyes,
And the interval.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, and that's like that's what like set it over the top for me. It was like I hope people get imagery about music and stuff like that, like in it. So, and then so then I've slowly developed into this like droney, improvisational music that I'm doing now, and I'm slowly trying to get that back to like I feel like I'm looping back around now to the Perception is the World stuff with Infinite Third, with like it's more tied to my emotions now, and it's more genuine. But I want to go back to how I used to write those songs, like really compose things, because I've gone so improvisational that it's almost like out of control, and I want to have like really I want to rein in it a little bit, so.
So I definitely had some questions. I was thinking,
First music name?
spiritual undeath. Spiritual undeath when I was in high school.
Common theme, Newman on the underneath and the spiritual undeath.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I had one of those guitar tab programs, and I used to program MIDI notes, and it was all general MIDI. It was like Tabit or Guitar Tab Pro or something, Guitar Pro, whatever. And I used to make these songs, and some of the songs that I have, the melodies, I just kind of revisit. And that's always something cool with music. It's not necessarily words, it's just kind of revisiting different melodies.
Motifs and sampling yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to Carl King, and he was saying that he really likes to do that, but he gets a lot of criticism for it. So he's recycling ideas or something like that? Like he had an album called Fanatical Video Game Retroverse, where he did it with his really old Atari computer, and to me it kind of sounds like Sims 2000 type music, but it's all like ridiculous. Like no one is ever gonna play this type stuff. It's just so technical. Like it's amazing, and that actually really inspired me to try to make music. But I was stuck with Reason 4.0 or 3.0, I think, at the time, and it was insanely MIDI. I couldn't really make rock because I couldn't do like a guitar input. So the stuff that I would make would be so experimental and weird that my brother would compare me to like Square Pusher. And at the time I'd never heard of Square Pusher. So I was like, if he thinks I sound like Square Pusher and Venetian Snares, an Aphex Twin.
Oh, let's go them out. That's a good idea.
Yeah, maybe I should listen to that. And then I heard Plunging Hornets by Venetian Snares. Listen to the drum machine. Like, just the fact that he said drum machine, like, at the time, you know how people, they hear electronic music and they just think techno, you know?
And we're talking the 90s, not now. This is a different ballgame these days.
Yeah, it's like 2006.
When we were working on this stuff, we were working out in the garage in the basement and
Yeah.
really alone and crying to ourselves in the microphone. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like, to me, like with the thought of like electronic music was like, oh, is that just the people who go to raves and do ecstasy and go to clubs? Like I didn't know what electronic music really was, and what I was doing was electronic music, but I kind of took pride in the fact that I didn't really listen to electronic music. I knew my stuff was totally out there and like alienated, or not alienated, but like isolated. But I mostly listen to like Dream Theater and Rush and death metal, Carl King with his Sir Millard Mulch project, and Dream Theater. I said Dream Theater, but yeah, that's kind of they're worth it. John Petrucci is the best.
Say it 5 times. It's all good. We're gonna say its name twice.
Yeah, I might have to say Rush like at least 7 more times because Geddy Lee. But yeah, what was sort of like your midpoint? Like what where did you go like from where you started? When did you think like I want to do music? You know, and I also wanted to ask before, while you were starting out, what were you listening to? And also, I really wanted to say, because I was trying to think back what I wanted to say, as far as dub stuff, I've been listening to Ital Tech lately and Digital Mystics. Great stuff.
Absolutely. So the first question, right, was how did those things hybridize? And then the second was how do we describe where we're at now and how we got here musically? And then the third one was Ital Tech and that kind of like Planet Muse style, you know, UK take on dub electronic and all that. Yeah. So to answer the first part of your question, so my first alias, like I mentioned, was Numenon. It was this really sort of abstract, super analog, super tapey, IDM-esque stuff. Again, it was like you were describing earlier, you know, you and your parents' spot in Long Island City, mine and my parents' spot in Wisconsin, you know, like separated by half of a continent, but like still uniquely connected and yet isolated. Still interesting combination of themes there, but that is kind of what a lot of this comes out of. Electronic music being really introverted, but at the same time, music being inherently extroverted in its nature, you know, to communicate something between people. But I was mostly just making it for myself at that point in time. And there was that transition point where I actually got kicked out of my parents' house for a little while. And ended up staying with a friend and decided to just change my style up a little bit. So I've been wearing like, you know, Jinkos and like, you know, Hot Topic shit for a long time. I had like spiked like neon blue hair and like metal things everywhere, giant like wallet chains. And I was like kind of into the cyberpunk like 90s aesthetic. And you know, in Wisconsin, in our small high school, graduating class of like 79 people, I was like the only one that dressed like that. Whereas, you know, I found out later like that was just a mall like phenomena. Basically, we didn't really have a mall close by, so I thought I was special. But for some reason, I ended up like feeling like the need to strongly push against that. Like wearing plastic changed into wearing, you know, more like plaid and corduroy and like patchwork and, you know, hippie stuff basically. So I ended up having a deep affinity for camping as a place to sort of get away into my own thoughts with no judgment, you know, because nature just kind of sits there and it does its thing, and it's perfect, and yet it's covered in literal dirt, which is a interesting combo. We try to keep everything clean, and therefore, you know, we think it's perfect, but that's the only true perfection is when you're out camping and you're looking out over the river and you hear like the frogs and the birds all going to sleep and you're by yourself, and that's where I really found a deeper sense of meaning and a deeper like sense of what my sound would be and how I would connect that back to all the machines I've been playing with. So that's kind of where that is literally where I started formulating the first Skytree album, which is when I took all those techniques and I got Fruity Loops, because my good friend who I was staying with had an awesome machine. He was the son of a doctor, and they had really nice, powerful computers, and I can go anywhere in his house and like hook up to a kick-ass computer and go to work. And I made a whole album while living away from my parents' place as Skytree, and that's where I made the first album called Yggdrasil, which you know, the pronunciation of which is debatable, but that's the tree of Norse mythology, under which everything else dwells, essentially. So that was the starting point. And I don't even remember where I came up with the name Skytree or how that became the thing I wrote on all those demo CDs, but I took that album, I sent it out I was like, I'm going to get signed to Warp now. This is going to be great. So obviously true. So I sent it out to everybody I could as like my first demo CD, a full album, you know, like super presumptuous, you know, 18-year-old thing to do. And Didn't hear back from anybody, but I did find that my friends really enjoyed it, and I was able to share some more stuff with people. And I had a band at the time too. I can't remember what we called ourselves. It was either like Mind Fire or Fire of the Mind or something. And my first gig was at the county fair, playing that Squire Strat. Doing a lead and seeing how the girls got way into it, and then realizing like there was a power factor there, and I had to be careful of that sort of angle on why we drive ourselves into music in the first place. So that being an element of that combination, it sort of emerged from there, and it's refined itself since into a bit more technical approximation. Music to begin with is to make something kind of make sense to me, because the rest of it often does not. So like how I got to be here is like a whirlwind of a journey. It's totally like Dreamtime weirdness to me. Like out of all the things that got me to travel the country and meet my partner I'm with now and settle down here and have my 2 cats and everything and be here with you guys doing this podcast is still very mysterious to me, but it was propelled by my music. So when I was first making it, like we were back initially, there was nobody really listening to that kind of stuff. At least we felt like there wasn't anybody that was like kind of an audience for it. And then the IDM kind of isolation segued into the EDM kind of boomtown phenomena. And you want me to take a second here? You guys gonna do a cut?
No, sorry, I was just giving some technical.
You can set that here too, if it's closer to you, and you can hold the water nearby so you don't get parched.
Joe Rogan ever says technical difficulties like Jamie fucked up.
God damn it, Jamie. We'll blame him on Jack. Fucking Jack behind the camera there. Yeah, we only refer to you by the Fabian name. We'll call you Jack, and we'll blame everything on you. There we go. Oh, well, like I said, I didn't know if we were cutting there or not. So I was answering your second question, which is like about how we got here and everything, and like how music propelled that. And I still honestly don't know. I do know that like when I was first making music under that alias, I felt like very introverted. Again, by myself camping in the middle of the woods, getting inspiration for the kind of sounds that would go into this first Skytree album, and didn't think anybody would ever listen to it. It wasn't really super critical. I thought if I sent the demo out that there would be some label heads that would be interested, but as far as like there being an audience for this, especially in the United States, I had no idea that things would come to where they are now, which is a huge, massive expansion on, I almost like hesitant to use the word huge now. Huge, massive expansion. The biggest, hugest expansion of electronic music. You guys could cut this. You take that most amazing cake and you turn it down, and then you turn it back up again, and it becomes EDM, and then you put bass nectar on top. Add some nectar, some sweet nectar. So Jack, what's up?
That chocolate cake just got 10 feet high.
In our good old government called the Café Act or something.
Yeah,
There's a Covfefe Act now?
Yeah,
Okay, thank goodness.
It's about government officials' tweets, right? Like about like their social media.
They
Like
cannot delete their tweets because Trump likes to tweet his tweets.
Don't delete that tweet.
He's like, he really thinks that people forget, and we haven't picked up on screenshotting in like the last couple of years.
Wow. Yeah, that kind of makes sense given his age. So, no offense, that's not an ageist comment. It's a Trumpist comment. I will acknowledge that, but I don't think it will conflict with our audience. So, and if it does, I apologize. Everybody's cool. We're all dreaming this together. Yeah. Well, if you're watching 65-year-olds, we respect you. Let's hang out more. I'm looking forward to having more white hairs in here, but I have enough already for my age. So, I was not at all expecting to get calls to play festivals, for example, when I first started releasing music. I didn't even know what a festival was. And I had not been to a festival until I went to go play a festival. That was my first experience being at one, was being at, it was a festival in Lulu Hot Springs in Montana. And I had an awesome experience, and was actually there for the first time with Grant Grizz playing his first gig. And he's been doing amazing things since. He just wrote an op-ed for Huffington Post. I don't know if you guys saw that. Really amazing personal story that he was able to relay. But he's gotten pretty massive through his own sound, and there were other first-timers there too. It was really interesting, because we were all just kind of like these naive kids, not wondering why everybody was interested actually in hearing our music, and there to play it for the first time to people. And that was back in 2010, I think, 2011. So I was not at all prepared to take this show on the road and to play live. I just knew what I enjoyed in headphone land, essentially. So that's still something that I have a difficult time wrangling with, because electronic music now is this massive cultural phenomena, whereas I was used to being the lonely kid, sitting listening to Boards of Canada, 17 years old with no friends that understood or even would like appreciate it if I put it on the car stereo on our drive out in the country or whatever. And now to see even Boards of Canada mentioned by people frequently is a trip, because I thought totally it was like something I just found through Kazaa or LimeWire, from like some random shack in Scotland or something. So there's been a lot of changes there, but then to see like it develop into now artists like Ital Tech and let's see, that was your initial mention, and then Planet Mu being sort of an IDM label, but now having a lot more sort of larger, more commercial type artists on their label. I don't even know if the founder of Planet Mu, Mike Paradinas, who used to go by Musique, right? Anticipated this at all. I think even the label heads of like Warp had no idea how it would go, and I think it took us all by surprise. It's pretty cool. It's also something that frustrates me sometimes, because I feel like it's kind of watered down things. It's made it like a commodity, whereas before it was like this sacred like cow that I just got to cuddle with. Yeah, but that happens with everything. There's no stopping an idea whose time has come, kind of idea. So that's my answer to your 3 questions. But I'll hand it out to Billy.
Man, I'm like, one of my favorite producers is Fortet, but I feel like he like kind of goes into the IDM world, but I don't know what a lot of people call him like jungle and stuff. I don't know.
I call him IDM.
Okay, yeah, me too. Yeah, no,
the way he produces and
yeah,
his scene, how long he's been involved.
Yeah.
And stuff, so.
What questions am I answering right now?
The first one was like, how did your current sound come into its own, and then the second question is how did that get you out to hanging out here, for example?
Yeah, okay. Okay.
What do you think of the current modern, the modern take on electronic music, like artists,
yeah,
crowd scene, stuff like that?
Okay. Oh, jeez. All right.
No questions.
Yeah. Man, I think I kind of covered how my sound got to where it was, like in a general way. I guess as far as like playing live, I was like us probably and just doing it in my room, and I think I shared it on like MySpace and stuff. Yeah. I've realized mine is too. My perception as the world one is.
Overridden JavaScript,
Yeah. So I was just sharing that stuff, and I started live streaming, and I would kind of like, this is when I really got into like improvisation, and I want to say like, I think I was just like jamming for the first time with my friends and like making music that was like, we would just play for hours, and it would just be like one long refreshing song, not like we were trying to like learn a song or anything like that. We were just jamming, I guess. I don't like using the word jamming anymore either, because like jam bands and stuff, because like I feel like, I don't know, it's this weird thing, but
it's more dub. You might get your affinity for jams again.
Yeah, okay, good.
Jamming especially.
Yeah. So I was live streaming. I think I tried live streaming through a bunch of different services back in like 2010, 2011, 2010, and I would just like eat some mushrooms and like play, and that was when I was having like my own little like church experience at home. And then when I turned on the camera, it was like this other thing, like why, like it brought up a lot of things, like what am I doing this for, like what, and then I realized like I appreciated like the connecting with people about it and stuff like that, and it turned into someone inviting me to do that. Not the mushroom part, they didn't know about the mushroom part, but to do that.
If they were also
there. Yeah, they might have known. And so I got invited to this coffee shop to like have like a time block every once in a while, and that turned into like, all right, well, you can be part of this show, and I'd be playing with like a couple like punk bands or like whatever, and I always was exposed to these shows that were just total diverse lineups. And then from that place that I'm talking about, which is a coffee shop, there's a place called the Venture Compound in St. Pete, which is a noise venue that actually just closed down. But they were around since then, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. And that's pretty much what I've had the most shows of anywhere like by a lot at the Venture Compound, and I was part of all these noise fests and noise shows. But my music was at the time even like melodic, and it actually had a structure, which a lot of the noise stuff didn't. But it like taught me that I could just totally fuck everything up and make it just harsh noise if I wanted to, and that was just as valid as the pretty parts of the music. So I think a lot of what my sound is now comes from this noise scene that I was a part of, which I don't even know again how I got there. No, I know it's really random, because it took me a while to like really realize what was going on around me, because I was just being asked to play in this warehouse. I didn't really know the scene that well, and I had to like kind of just look around and be like, okay, this is like, these are like very specific people here doing this. And then they would do these noise fests, like the International Noise Conference. Well, they have them everywhere, but there's a Miami one. And I was like 4 hours away from Miami, and we would have every year like a pre-International Noise Conference where it'd be like 2 days of just noise, and it was always like Super Bowl Sunday, which I thought was awesome. I was like, fuck the Super Bowl, I'm gonna go go to this noise fest.
Let's celebrate the same time as everybody else.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I was like, I remember being like really nervous to play and be like, am I noise enough for this? Like, cause I was like, I was playing melodies, and like, as improvisational and like weird it was, and like obviously experimental just in nature, it was like a lot of live processing. Yeah, and I was like, man, if I do this one beat, like it's gonna turn into like real electronic music for a second, and I don't want to like turn everyone off. And then I slowly realized that like my when I was like, no, fuck that, I'm not gonna try to be like the noise people that I see. I'm just gonna like be my version of it. And it had this like kind of catharsis, my set kind of had that in like a different way, I think, than a lot of the harsh stuff. A lot of the harsh was like more aggressive, and mine was kind of just like timid at first, but then it built into this thing. And I felt like once I did that, it was like really, it taught me a lot about what type of music can go together on a bill or on a lineup. And that's kind of been my goal this whole time. It's like I don't want to be on just ambient shows. I don't want to just be on like post rock shows. Like when I put together shows at home, and I've been doing that a lot lately, I'll try to switch it up and make it like three things that like oddly go together but are totally different vibes each set.
That's why we've been built together a couple times.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
Coming from the noise scene, and
Mm-hmm.
and then me doing random shit in Wisconsin, somehow like that,
I know it's awesome. Yeah, and I have my own relationship with the festival world, because I don't really necessarily find that I've, probably in the way you have in the past, like not felt that I don't feel sometimes that I'm bringing the same type of set as like some of the like the dance sets and stuff, even if they're down tempo. A lot of them have like a certain like arc of, it's very particular and like laid out in a certain way, and BPM that even if they're not thinking about that, they're like thinking about the dance floor. And I'm strictly not. I've come from like the more like metal side. So like I feel like, and when I say metal, I mean like the post metal, like where it builds and crescendos and stuff.
And the noise where like you don't want to beat for too long, otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with the festivals, I've found that it's taken me a long time to really feel like I fit into these lineups, because a lot of the lineups seem really curated in one direction sometimes. But then they'll put me off in like the side tent, where it's like the experiential tent where you like go and you trip or whatever. Yeah, no, I know, but it's like where you go and yeah, like I play like, yeah. And then I find that like they kind of box me into like this soothing ambient drone music that I don't necessarily want to be in all the time either. And I want to, yeah, and I don't want to be that, but I'm totally fine. Like I'll go there, but I try to like, I feel like I'm like tricking everyone into relaxing enough to be able to like accept the heavy part when it comes and like build it up. So that's also part of my new album, is that I want to like kind of bridge all the things I've been doing and make them all one thing. So which I'm sure everyone's going for in some way, like all the things you do and put them together. But like I said, I play yoga sets, and that has a certain expectation of like, all right, well, don't get too crazy. You're right there. And you kind of have to be mindful of what the flow is doing. I want to make an album that like kind of touches on that world, but and goes in the whole, it's going to have some noise, like really harsh noise on it, I think too, at some point, where it just totally washes out, so.
I see you playing a yoga set, and then like somebody can tree pose, those and you hit like a specific note really intensely. On
Yeah. No, that's a big like that's a big thing. Like you learn about doing yoga sets. It's like I beatbox in these yoga sets now. That's what I do. I don't trigger beats because I can never be sure that like it's going to be the right vibe, you know, because a lot of my beats are kind of like they're not like 4 on the floor even close a lot of times, but they do groove a little bit. But with the beatboxing, I can kind of do a 4 on the floor thing, but I can build it on the spot. So I'm sure a lot of people do it in Ableton and, you know, that kind of thing, like building things on the spot and the elements. But I've gotten to this point where I just kind of improvise through it and I keep it as simple as possible. There's guitar elements and then there's mouth elements, and I've just mixed those two together. And I, you know, yeah. So, the second question was about
the third one was
the third one,
and you touched on that too, like where it's kind of going with people being like boxed down in the festival line.
Yeah. And I hope that we can. I mean, I hope that it's going to a place. Well, it kind of is. Like the bigger festivals are every type of music. They're trying to attract everyone, but I'm finding like on the local level, like it's like a language that people don't know. It's to why would you put those bands together? Like it doesn't click with them. Where I look at that lineup and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to that because that's not just going to be a standard night of music.
Yeah, it's eclectic.
Yeah, because you know, in Florida, it's all folk night, or it's like a bunch of like psychedelic rock bands together, you know, and it's cool. I love those bands. I just think we should like cross pollinate way more than we do.
I agree.
Yeah. And my other thing about that has been this year I've done ambient installations, which I call them, which are along the lines of what we were talking about with like being in the chill tent. I've just asked venues all around my town, not venues, just coffee shops or bookstores or whatever, if I can like schedule a 4-hour block and call it an ambient installation. They all have the same flyer but different times and dates on it. And I did 22 of them from February to May. And it was great. It brought out people that are into noise and like, oh, what's that pedal you got? Like it brought out a lot of people that just want to see something in action like that. But it also brought out people who like to do yoga and meditate. And then it brought out people who just have no idea like why they even stumbled into this. They just walked into like a museum and there's a guy playing and they were like, oh, like I gotta you know, see what this is about.
No,
so
psychedelic cats and people were just like out of their minds a little bit, need something weird.
Totally. Yes. Yes. So I think that that's like been part of my mission this year is to kind of like shake up like expectations of live music and all that. But I mean, not in like a huge scale. I'm talking like I've probably reached about, you know, 1,000 people, 2,000 people maybe in my town in those months, which is cool for something that nobody has any. It's not like a show. You can just like, invite someone to your show. I have to give them like, all right, it's this 4-hour block. You can stop in anytime. Bring your book to read. You know, do whatever. I kind of set it up like that, and people ended up getting it, but it really shows you how like people are just like, all right, what times it start? 9 p.m. What's the lineup? You know, and how much is the cost of the door? And there's definitely like languages in place for how people experience music that I hope we're like kind of, I don't know, getting past in a way. Like we're,
you know, there's like edges there, but you can like.
Yeah. Do you have any experience like with other live type shows? Like, cause you have played at Cosm, right? And like what other shows like what all these different. I'm sure you've played a lot of different things. So I'm wondering what your experience of like live is.
Word. Well, like I mentioned, the very first one was just playing at the county fair. You know, like 17 years old with my Squire Strat and watching the high school girls actually enjoy it. Versus me feeling like I was just making weird noise for myself, which I didn't want to share with anybody, and I purposefully didn't, other than my girlfriend at the time. She's the only person that I share that music with, maybe a couple good friends. But like, I from there started playing shows that there was this overlook, looking out over the river where we grew up in my small town, 2,000 people. So I did every so often like a Friday night show there with my friends, and we do like odd live performances. Once we did like a cover set of Radiohead Radiohead. So it was a cool thing to get up and all do Idiotech together with my friend Alex, who's a great drummer, and my friend Ian, who's a great vocalist and can really kind of nail a Tom York impression pretty well. And then having the opportunity to mess with everything in electronics, before Ableton, I did this all through Cubase, so we were just kind of like tracking, and I was adjusting things on the fly with my MIDI controller. And watching, people just wander around town, stopping from their grocery shopping or going to pick up some picture frames at the local framing shop downtown, stopping and watching us and wondering what the shit was happening. Under the guise of, basically masquerading as Radiohead, we were able to sort of, neglect our own strangeness in that equation. Think, well, if they think this is weird, it's Radiohead's fault. Basically, who we really, really were into at the time. This is around when Kid A first dropped and everything. So from there, I also played a bunch of ambient sets at a local sculpture park in Franconia, Minnesota. So when they would do like sculpture openings, like new exhibits and things like that, my really good friend who I ended up connecting in that small town of Wisconsin, Woody McBride, goes by DJ ESP, and it turns out he's a mainstay in the trance and techno community, and he's internationally well known for techno. In our small town, nobody knew, and I think those who didn't care. I think that's one of the reasons why he lives there. But he basically took me under his wing a little bit and started giving me gigs, including gigs in Minnesota, because he started curating a lot of events at First Avenue in Minneapolis, which is the venue that Prince really sort of got on the map by playing a lot of gigs there and having people come in and actually really get into the scene in Minneapolis. And I remember I was sitting backstage for the first time in First Avenue on the purple couch, and I was playing a show with the band Lotus, who has since really gotten a lot more traction as well. And they're more of a jam band, but there are definitely electronic elements. And coming from a strictly electronic background with some electronic guitar, other aspects mixed in, felt like it was somewhat of an odd pairing, but in that moment I realized like it was just worth it to sit on the purple couch, which is why I have a purple couch now, by the way. So I felt everybody's pain with the loss of Prince and all that jazz over the past like year and a half. But the festival experience moving forward has been a bit contentious, because one thing that I'm really uncomfortable with, and this is kind of ironic given that we're talking about our experiences here and kind of pontificating a bit, is that like there's this ego aspect that's come into electronic music, which for me is just like it's so deeply unfamiliar that I'm really uncomfortable with it, and I almost wish I didn't have to be seen on stage. So I'm not sure about what my future live performance life will look like, if that's really going to be a part of where I'm going with it, because my favorite like three artists, Burial, Boards of Canada, and Bibio, don't play live. In fact, most people never see them. So Bibio's maybe done a handful of gigs, and he might do some more, but for the most part he doesn't. And I started to feel more uncomfortable with that when I started to see more of this ego get injected into it, basically, and sort of usurp the nakedness and the sheer play value of electronic music. And yeah. Do you want to take the mic from here?
Sure, a little bit. You saw a private listening party for Aphex Twin, right? And the whole thing was in a club. It was just all pitch black, right? Yeah.
And that was really weird, because I showed up with my girlfriend, and we were listed, so I gave them my name, and they said they couldn't find me, and I was like, look under Skytree, and they were like, oh, there you are, and you have a +5. And I was like, oh, well, I should have had more guests, but like it was weird to be on Warp's guest list with my artist name only for an Aphex Twin listening party in New York for the album that dropped a couple years ago. And it was something, again, kind of made me uncomfortable. And like, in a way, I wish I was as playful as Richard James in that sense, because I'd be like, fuck it, I'm just going to like grin and put my face on everything and just like make it a monstrosity of a joke. But I can't do that. I'm not like, for me, music is inherently funny in some ways, but I can't go like the full on with like Weird Al, like kind of absurdity angle with it. Like, let's see. My friend Rob Cillian, Supercilious, is really adept at that, and he can brush anything off his shoulders as a result. So if you go with that angle, I think it's more possible to sort of usurp the egoic absurdity, and bring it back home again, full circle into meaning somehow through being meaningless. But that's still something I can't necessarily reconcile with my sound or what I had set out to do with music. So I have a few symbols, like the Aphex symbol on my monitor over there, plus like the Fractal Tribe symbol. So the only people that I'm really involved with now in the live sense are our crew, the Fractal Tribe, and we have Fractal Fest, which is our festival in upstate, coming up in the second to last weekend of July this year, and we've been doing it every year for a little while now. It's getting bigger and bigger, and there's more of a focus now on bringing in a lot of different artists. But the central theme is electronic artists. So whatever that is, there's a spot for somebody. So my set I'm playing this year is specifically not on the lineup. I didn't want myself listed. It's a secret set at 1 a.m. on a Saturday, and it's all ambient in the chill tent. I don't want to be like the focus of people's attention. So if I'm going to do music right, I think that I would rather play in total darkness like Autechre do, for example. Like I've seen them 3 times now, and they play with no lights on, so you can't see them. Aphex, yeah, sometimes a lot of his newer shows have such intense lights that you can't really focus on him. And what he does, the listening party was dark, but so he did a show in Europe not too long ago where he's taking this technology he's used in the past couple shows of looking out over the crowd. And using facial recognition technology to basically take his grinning Aphex face and put it on them and use their faces as like a template to project stuff on stage. So he's basically turned the camera back at the audience also, which is like, I think an awesome angle to go to sort of, again, like render that egoic element totally absurd in context, but still like making a meaningful experience for people. And you can see people as they're panning the camera throughout the crowd, seeing their faces being projected up there with his grin on it and just like getting a huge kick out of it. So everybody enjoys it. It's a smart way to go, but yeah, that's kind of my take on that.
I just want to say, I think one of the saddest things about music right now is all about the festival, whole circuit, or whatever you call it. It's more about how many people do you have showing up to the events to see like Skrillex or whatever. Oh, yeah, check out, we have a gazillion people in this crowd, and maybe 100 of them are having a good experience and hearing it okay. Is that how it is? Like, I've never really been to a festival. I can't imagine everyone hearing it like that well.
I feel like we're talking about a lot of smaller scale festivals, right? Yeah. Like, we're not talking like Bonnaroo and Coachella.
I've never been to a single festival.
I mean, I did
like,
a Wakarusa set. That was also like kind of a last minute add-on, but.
I mean, like Catskill Chill size, maybe, because they got some of the bigger people, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about before when you talked about what really shaped your sound was spending all that time in nature, and it really made me think a lot of the stuff that really inspired me, the sounds that I hear in my head, probably inspired from the fact that I've been sitting in my room in suburbia the entire time, because the physical sounds that I imagine in my head is like wood. And like rubber and metal and plastic, and so I have all these like real clicks and like buzzes, and it's really interesting. I never really thought about that before.
Definitely influences how you hear, in general, because it's like kind of there's like the nose blind phenomena where if you're around, like, because I have cats and thankfully it's not a huge problem, but if I let it go in the litter box for a few days, I stop noticing. So I try to keep on top of it so I don't like make my guests throw up, because it won't affect me after a while. It's the same thing with sound. So being in New York has made it a bit more of a challenge in that respect, but it's still definitely possible here in Queens, especially like waking up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and hearing the dawn chorus outside, because like you wake up at 5 in Queens and all you hear is birds. There's like no cars on the road. Everybody's finally asleep. Thank God there's nobody screaming outside like half a block away, drunk out of his mind at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday. That does happen, but he goes to bed at 5 and then the birds wake up. there's definitely been a deeper investigative aspect of like finding where those sounds hide in the city and then drawing them out a little bit. So one of the things I've been doing to explore that a little bit more and still keep that involvement in the music scene, but not necessarily do as many live shows, as I've been teaching classes at a spot in Greenpoint for field recording and for using those sort of like everyday sounds in Ableton, cutting it up and making a drum rack out of it, whatever you've got. And a lot of students that grew up in more urban areas, especially those who've always been here in New York, often just like turn into total play mode. They turn into like kids again to get out there and like put a piezo pickup on a chain link fence and hit it with a bunch of sticks, you know? That's for me like one of the best ways I can find to get sounds. And I have friends who are super dedicated, you know, audio engineers and sound designers who will go in, they'll design a sound from scratch, a kick from scratch out of a single sine wave, you know, out of one oscillator, and dial it in, and they'll spend like, you know, hours making that particular exact sound. But I don't know if it's because I'm too impatient or because of the way I grew up, because I listen for the sounds that I want, and I go and just, you know, try to find a way to capture them as best as I can. And there's a certain element of deeper honesty for me in that personally, and I don't want it to stare at the computer for too long, because I have, you know, 33-year-old neck and shoulders issues going on, so I don't really want to like push that too much more, and I should probably adjust my posture a little bit while I'm talking. But there was one festival I did a few years ago, I think it was 2012, and there was a sample I was looking for, which was a bunch of frogs to go with this particular track. And I was also on way too much acid, which I do not recommend for anybody performing to a large crowd, because I was following Papadosio, so there was a crowd kind of built in, and my screen looked like Jelly Beans or Dr. Mario, and it was very difficult to discern what was happening. Thank goodness I had the APC-40 to sort of go hardware interface style. But I was looking for this frog sample, and it might have been because of where I was at in my headspace, but I realized that we were in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, and there were actually frogs all around the main stage if you listen. So I brought down the main mix, and I was like, just told people on the mic, I can't find my frog sample, but I realized it was really stupid because there were frogs all around us. So let's sit here and just like listen for a second. And that was a moment for me in recognizing the absurdity and sort of trying to like be so ostentatious that I'm going to play louder frogs over the actual frogs. They're just trying to get laid that night so they can persist as a species, and my fucking presumption of like bombasting them with DBs. What's up, Jack?
He is almost Phil.
Wow, we did it.
How many minutes we got?
It's got to be an
Just
hour.
keeps beeping. I don't know.
What does it say?
Let's do a hotspot.
Hotspot. You guys gonna throw?
Unless you're good with an hour, that was, I think, an hour. I'll check my.
We can throw a
Do a swap. I wanted to bring up a few points that I could bring up real quick before it ends. Also, I just really want to say how hard it is to to do a podcast when you've never done one before, because I'm listening to all your cool stories, but I'm also like, what am I gonna say next? Because as soon as the mic comes to me, I'm gonna be like, oh, I don't know, and try to remember what I was gonna say.
So far, but yeah, I agree. I've done the podcast hosting before.
Yeah. I want to.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
We have 4 minutes. We have 4 minutes to go, so we might have beeping during this. I wanted to ask, what were the?
What's gonna happen?
I want to, in the next part, I want to talk about the challenges of bringing your set to a live. For the first time you like got your stuff together and brought it to in a live setting, because I feel like my music is so like in between ambient and chill and house and stuff that I don't really know where it would fit. I went to see Zebulon and Canty Experience at in Flushing a couple weeks ago, and it was very heavy, but like I don't see my stuff being heavy, but like I also don't see it being like spacey ambient or house or chill. Like it's so weird. Like I see it just being experimental, like Flying Lotus type stuff, but it's all instrumental, so I don't really know the kind of place that I can bring it to. So I guess let's digitize real quick.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so this is what happened. The memory card, it cut short. It cut short at about 50 minutes in. He was talking, but I remember distinctly I walked over and I thought I stopped the recording. So
Yeah,
it could be anywhere. So we're here on the roof. We're hanging out. We're talking about the festival circuit.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you want to like cap that off, since we got a few minutes here left to sort of finish up our conversation, I think it'd be interesting to sort of touch on where we're at now and how this connects to our current moment here in 2017 with, Trump Tower right over there, and, the two giant airports right next to the apartment building here that create a line of lights every night. It looks like fucking Blade Runner when I look out the window. It's an interesting, it's a weird place to be, like on Coruscant, living with the Dark Tower, Sauron right over there, and having you guys here having this conversation, being able to chill with Billy for the first time in New York. It's beyond hologram, dreamtime, strange, phenomenological pattern of events that got us here. Now we have Trump as president. So how does that reflect on our musical experiences and everything else? It's really a bizarre time and an amazing time for art, because in my experience, the best art comes out of moments like this culturally, and we're in a really fucked up weird time. So I expect some really damn good music out of people and some cool paintings and weird conversations like this. So mission accomplished today.
See, my mind always goes to Tron when I see all the lights and everything.
Oh, there we go.
I don't know why. It just feels like I'm in the game and like running around it, but there might be like a higher person beyond it controlling me, but I don't know. But I fight for the
Are
users.
you the avatar or the user?
Yeah, or both.
Where's the DM?
There we go. Yeah.
I wanted to get in some stuff before the card ran out. I kind of feel like this whole existence could be a dream in itself. You ever feel like that?
I'm pretty
Like
convinced
you
it is
could be
at this point,
living in
personally,
someone
yeah.
else's dream that is literally sleeping right now.
Well, it's kind of like the philosophical idea of like a solipsism, which is the dream creating the reality. My brother used the term once, multinodal solipsism, to describe what he perceives the world as in some ways, and I really resonated with too, which is to say like that solipsism, that dream arises out of all of us, and we wake up early in the shared dream to go to bed at night, and that's a personal thing, it's some deeper cosmic, astral projected reality experience, whereas when we come here, we're on Earth, and we all have to deal with this together. So that's the way I perceive it personally. This is the result of our shared dream, and everything we're standing on, every human being, is crystallized thought and intention. It's solidified into reality. We get to stand on it. That's the result of having the experiences I've had, but that's pretty much what I perceive the world as. If I'm mindful, if I'm frustrated and stuff easily, it's easy to just forget.
Even like the top gurus, they don't really put any thought to getting angry about stuff. They exist, right? Because that's all I hear about.
That's all you need to remember in order not to be pissed.
Yeah, when Duncan Trussell and those people, they talk about being around like the top gurus. It's nothing like what they thought it was going to be. Like they do everything to kind of dismantle like the idea that they're like some top holy guy, but then they'll crack a joke and say something and get mad. They're like us, but
Or have a whoopee cushion, just like on the spot while talking in the middle of their own philosophical diatribe, purposely make a fart sound, that kind of stuff.
I like to look at the dreaming thing. I do like the Remember Your Dreaming is like the name of our collective and stuff. I got the shirt on.
Yeah.
A little symbol right now. But I look at dreaming kind of from the experiential perspective, and then like when people ask like why is it named that and stuff, I'm always I kind of am really vague about it because everyone has their own interpretations of it. But I like to kind of frame it in the way of like people just kind of use the word dreaming as like what your mind does to experience what's happening around you. Like I like that, like in the kind of the Toltec way. Have you ever heard like the Toltecs and the Don Miguel Ruiz Four Agreements and shit?
Absolutely.
Like it kind of that's like
Toltec wisdom.
Yeah, Toltec wisdom. Yeah, totally. So I like to I started looking into like lucid dreaming because I've had some like I've experienced it and I'm really like vigilant of my dreams, but I'm not like obsessive about them. So I read like lucid dreaming books and just books about like dream study and dream recall and all that, and I kind of just replace it all with like living, and I kind of just apply it straight to life. Like when they'll talk about when you're lucid dreaming, sometimes you become lucid and like the dream starts to like you become more aware that you're dreaming and everything starts to like vibrate, and some people just like wake up right there because it's too intense. And I like to think of that like kind of like in a deja vu sense, like when you have that feeling, it's just like I don't know. Maybe everyone experiences it differently.
It's
But
fun to hang out in.
I had deja vu earlier.
Yeah,
In the middle of the interview, I had a deja vu moment, and I remembered it. My deja vu's always come from a source of my dreams for some reason.
Yeah.
That's where originally it comes from.
there's another term for that, deja vu.
Deja vu.
Yeah, which is that you like dreamt this thing before, and now you're like living it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible what the mind can do. My only question is, why is it going like this? Why is our mind trying to create these realities or simulations where we have to kind of play it out? If this is really a simulation, then either there's an objective, we're just Sims, we're just doing it just to live, and that's the kind of whole point of it, which I think is a really cool thing about video games. It allows people to kind of like say, this is what I think life looks like to me, You say that you see a pen, I see a sword.
Well, especially now with VR.
Especially now with VR, there's this beautiful thing that Ram Dass said. I can't remember exactly, but he was talking about the veil and how Mother Nature, life, Earth, the physical plane, the visceral plane, is in front of us at all times. Imagine we're walking on a path, and Mother Nature's in front of us, and when the veil is removed, when she moves over to the side, you're able to see the path in front of you, the forest, the environment, everything. But that's only once she kind of moves, only once you get past that veil of the physical world. So there is a beyond. At least that's what a lot of people think. Yeah,
maybe.
Perhaps, maybe. As long as we live in...
I think that's like the answer there. It's like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
is obscurity
yeah,
the
why not?
answer?
Yeah.
I guess it kind of is the answer because we as humans want something definitive. We want it to be, it is black, it is white. That's what we like. We like
what are
that.
you asking when you're asking why? Like, what is that you're doing? What are you trying to...
My brain is trying to separate...
You're trying to like end the question.
To separate two things, to make two things different, either to put a wall
Exactly,
in between them, or to make it easier for my brain to comprehend. Okay, I'm looking at black right now. I'm looking at white right now. I gotta do something different with this. I think our brain moved past survival.
Yeah.
We definitely moved past survival.
You're looking for a stagnant
If we just needed to survive, we might have just say if evolution, the theory of evolution truly is true. Again, we can't accept anything as the truth because this all might be a fucking simulation anyway.
Yeah.
The theory of evolution is true, at least in this part. Then there's a reason our conscious evolved. Not just for larger social groups, because there are plenty of pack animals that have so large groups, families, rats that they can live together.
And giant balls, and they roll
giant balls, and just an entire mess full of things you don't need in your house. Yeah, and there's a reason that we have this enlarged brain. We have a really big prefrontal cortex. Some people think it's so we can handle more complex relationships and more of them.
So I think we can imagine the things that we're making before we make them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can think about what the building's going to look like before it becomes a thing, and that's why for me it's like crystallized consciousness phenomena.
Crystallized conscious. So just you look at it, and that's what makes it so, because it is appearing in.
It's that plus the physical interface, plus the willpower and the resources, but it is ultimately the result of thought. Somebody had to think about exactly the dimensions of this pipe. Now you go into nature, and none of it's like that. It just emerges. It's an emergent phenomena. This is more of a consciousness phenomena. But like, I can't answer that question. I'm not sure if anybody can. If I could, I would be definitely lying. I'd be definitely lying. Yeah. But like one thing I do come back to frequently is nested equations. So say in terms of like learning algebra in high school, you look at one equation, you see it as one equation. But as you start to learn about derivatives and integrals, you realize there are nested equations within that. So when we're looking at our political phenomena right now, for example, people think that we're on this part of the slope or this part, but there are slopes within that slope that define the area underneath the curve. There are curves that define where the slope is at that particular point on the curve, and then you can extrapolate that out into multiple dimensional calculus. And I try to remind myself frequently of how the equations that I think are just like static are in fact nested bundles of recursive and self-similar fractal algorithms. Fractal is not a word, but there it is.
That reminds me of Terrence McKenna, Time Wave Zero.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, time wave zero. So it's kind of like boiling it down to that one oscillation point, or like the omega, the teleological prime attractor, or the attractor at the end of history.
The transcendental object at the end of time.
Yeah, there we go.
I feel like the question why is like the most human thing, because like you're trying to like, you're almost trying to make something comfortable and like not alive by asking why. Because if that question were answered for you, like what would you do then? Like, well, you wouldn't have to ask it, which, it seems to be kind of driving what's behind what makes us do anything. It's like why we don't know why, so we have to create why.
So you mean
sit down and make some music.
So
go on the internet and make a post.
In this own little way, civilization came about, and all the beautiful pillars of the pillar of creativity, the pillars of politics, of government, of community, of infrastructure. All those things came out of it because we were asking why. why, why am I doing this? Why do this? And people contemplate and they come to the answer, oh, because I'm supposed to build a building today. That's why I'm alive. Okay, so I build a building. Okay, then what next? Oh, shit.
Then we do.
You know what? I need to communicate with people
Everywhere.
better.
But that was probably already just happening, like emerging. It almost emerged before we had to explain it, and because we would make like a
hut.
yes, okay. So
Like, actually, like, even as kids, we make forts. I think because it's actually part of our lineage.
You know what's weird?
So it's like
that
how we feel
I
like we
really
have to
want to make a
explain
point
didn't
or say
settle
something
on
about
us.
that.
Sure, yeah.
The first memory that I have of wanting to create is making a fort out of blocks in a kindergarten class. They had these long wooden blocks that were just boards or whatever, and they had this spot.
Nice.
They had this spot, yeah, basically, and they were cut.
Yeah.
And basically, there's a spot where it was like there's a table, and I saw one of the kids. If he found out that he crawled under a certain spot, he can get into like this almost sectioned off spot, and then we would take the wooden blocks and we would like build up this wall, and then we would like have our own little secret base. And then to me, that always
Your
became
reality, kind of like your.
to make your space. And then to build your space, and then you can live in it. But we feel like my whole life I got caught in this constant cycle of just build. So my whole brain is just set up to create. Like I spend all my time making music, videos, podcasts. I just literally create ways to create. But like,
I think we kind of have to. I think it's,
Yeah,
if you don't, then you fall into other
and
kinds of behavior. Yeah.
And getting back to dreams, I dreamt one time in a lucid dream that I was in a church, and there was like a front desk at this church, and there was this guy by the front desk, and he started talking to me, and then he says, imagination and creation are important in your world. And then he told me I was gonna wake up, and I woke up.
And here you are now. That's
I love how your spirit guides are so fucking direct. They appear in your dream in a
They
personified.
talk like a fortune cookie.
Yeah, they talk like a fortune cookie.
we should probably wrap up because it's hot as metaphysical balls up here. So we should probably descend into the.
But is it
I
really
I want to say.
No, hey,
Maybe
I'm
we're
testing
not
the
hot.
metaphysical balls, and they are indeed hot. So
I want to say. Are you still recording?
yeah, I know him.
All right, I want to say I'm glad we did this.
likewise.
This whole thing is like a personal battle with my own social anxiety.
That's what
And
music is for.
I guess it takes a lot for me to admit that.
The struggle to communicate
but I'm glad we
clearer.
did this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure, man. Thanks for coming and good to
And
see you
Billy,
again.
these guys are the best. Where can you find your stuff? Where can they find your stuff? I meant to say. And this is Fabio on the camera.
No, this is Dave.
Frank.
No.
Jack.
Oh, it's Frank. Oh,
Maybe have a
shit.
camera. Yeah. So if you just go to Skytree, one word, sky and tree, two things you see when you're out in the woods, and you put them together. Just Google it. I'm not the soft AI server system, and I'm not the giant skyscraper in Tokyo. So that leaves you via process of elimination with my stuff. So you'll find it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, Infinite Third, THIRD is spelled out, infinitethird.com. I'm not the drone rock band from the UK called the Infinite Three.
There we go. Good to know. Yeah.
But and I'm not the Korean boy band Infinite, which I get a lot of followers because of that. I'm not sure why. They must just be confused.
That could be the benefit.
Maybe the boy bands are got your back. They're sending them in your way.
Yeah,
There we go. There's a metal band in Texas named Skytree, two separate things.
Oh, okay.
So I get followers for them accidentally.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with it because it's two separate words. And
That's
it
all right.
doesn't
There's
interfere.
John and John.
Different
You got two
genre.
friends named
It's
John.
accidental pollination. Somebody might, be looking for my stuff and find them accidentally, and then end up liking metal. So that would be fucking sweet, and I'm glad for that.
So there's actually another owl movement, but it's a t-shirt brand, so I don't think I have anything to worry about.
There we go. Yeah,
you're
different
making
sector.
Yeah, true. Maybe I thought about doing a collab,
Well, they can make your t-shirts.
but I felt like that'd be too imposing if I tried to do a collab. That would be like trying to say we're equal.
It would be like Owl Movement to the power of Owl
It's like
Movement.
owl movement featuring owl movement. We would just both be owl movement, so I feel like, I don't know, it'd be a hard thing to try to pitch to them.
And my name is Fabio, so I'm fighting against a lot.
Yeah.
I'm competing against a large array.
Nomenclature can be very confusing, especially in